Lise was part of a panel yesterday talking about technology investments in wines from field to table. What makes sense and when it makes sense? You had some really inspiring quotes, some great energy to the panel. You talked about ROI, how you focus on that first when making a technological decision for your business. What do you look at specifically when thinking about ROI, though?
With ROI, it's really hard for me to answer that question, and people usually get really upset with me about this answer, but especially when I'm talking about enterprise software.
Mhm.
It's all about the kind of data that you're putting into it. Now, if you're putting in what I refer to as if you have trash in and trash out, that means if you're having bad data going in, you're only going to get bad data out. So the worth of that is really, you're never going to see that ROI ever. But the other thing you have to consider is who's the team that's managing that? Who's inputting that data? Who's managing that data? And who's utilizing that data? How are you taking care of your team? How much are you paying people? Who's managing it? And also, your entire executive team, how much are you setting up a culture around that to utilize that data and take action on that data? So when I'm talking about ROI on tech, how is your work culture and how are you setting up that entire team to really utilize that data? So if you have really good teams who are caring about it and you have an ambassador to handle that data and they have good data that you scrubbed and you're putting it in, you can really trust the ROIs that tech company is telling you about. But if you're not managing that company culture appropriately, you're never going to see an ROI out of it.
Definitely. And I like the emphasis on data because there's so much data in ag. And that's the purpose of this technology is to collect it, make actionable uses for that data. You mentioned something just there in your response, talking about trashy data. This concept of trashy data, and you're going to get trashy data back. You need someone that kind of knows what they're doing, putting the right data. And what is the importance of generating good quality data to really, improve both bottom lines and efficiencies?
That's the whole game. You can't just possibly get data or data for data's sake, is my term. Don't ever do that because you're wasting money, you're wasting time, you're wasting actionable time with your team.
Mm.
The other thing is when you have good data, you're able to take action on it and actually do something in the moment. And also, what's even more important is what I call move the needle. When you have good data and a good team that you're taking care of, and you are all utilizing the systems that you have, basically what I call you're using the system that you have generated and created, you can actually now start to move the needle and start looking in the future and start strategizing for your farm. And that's the most important thing. That's the reason why we should be investing in technology is to be able to use that to move that needle for the future. You should be using your data and technology for today, but you really need to be looking at it to use it for the future. So what I refer to is stop treading water now with the data you have. Start looking at how can we start to ride that wave and get in front of that wave for the future.
Definitely.
And I apologize, I'm a surfer, so I always use a lot of surf terms. It's either
That's,
surf or ski. Yeah, so
People think I'm a surfer too, so it makes sense.
perfect. I'd take you out on the
I appreciate that.
longboard time. That's fine.
Longboard
Yeah,
time.
you're good. Yeah.
I appreciate those outlooks and those insights on ROI and data. And I want to apply it to a real world situation. When you were talking up on the panel, you were mentioning a very simple investment for wine grape growers that really does pay off and it's a no brainer. You mentioned this investment in auto switches on frost fans. You never know what's going to happen during the season. If there's going to be a frost event that could wipe out the entire crop potentially. In the spirit of this conversation, how do you personally quantify an investment like this, taking the ROI logic that you were talking about earlier, assess its worth with our changing climate? Yeah.
The reason why I brought it up on the panel was because my team right now at this point in time, it's late January, we're going through our budget process. And I'm required to approach our executive team and family ownership at Foley Family Farms and Foley Family Wines and Spirits and show them what the ROI is on our recommended CapEx expenditures. And what I have a term is, and I hope this doesn't disengage your audience, but I love a spa day that I never take, by the way, because I'm a busy working woman and I never take that time for myself. But to me, auto switches on frost fans are self-care for a wine grower, all right? So if you want to be able to sleep well at night and know that you're not going to lose your entire crop in the course of a 4-hour frost event, that is a worthy investment. So the ROI on that is whatever is the cost of that whatever is the revenue of that crop, and also whatever is the operational spend that you had for that entire year. You take those two amounts and add them up, That is how much just buy the auto switches. Buy the auto switches if you can and just use it. It doesn't mean that your entire Frost Watch team gets to just sleep in and not pay attention. But it is self-care for the wine grower. Auto switches for Frost fans. Highly recommended. I like to sleep at night knowing that we have that extra level of technology working in our favor.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And again, just a really good example of what you were saying earlier about ROI, applying that to a real world situation here. One more thing I want to cover here, Lise, is a theme of this topic is that with these systems, the technology, they're only as good as the people that are being employed to use them. So why is it important to not only make sure that the folks on your operation know how to use these new tools you're investing in, but that they are continuing to use them correctly so that you're not puncturing the bottom line?
I'm going to even take it a step back, Taylor, on you and say you have to consistently invest in your team, period. Number one, if you don't consistently invest in your team, you shouldn't be adopting technology. So that's the first step is, hey, how am I investing in my team? Am I giving my team members a good living wage? Am I giving them good goals? Am I building them up? Do I have a really strong, good bench? Number one. Number two, the technology that I adopt, when I do adopt it, are we doing it in the right way? Do I have ambassadors on my team that are key people that are going to really bring that technology in and shepherd it? And number three, do check-ins, do quarterly check-ins. Is everybody using this technology efficiently and as much as was intended? Are we using it in a different way? And is the initial investment in that technology really paying out? I actually have my senior director of viticulture will actually go into the back end of one form of technology that we use, and she'll actually see each and every single team member, how often they log in and see how often they're using it. And she'll report back to us and say, yeah, I don't think we really need it. It doesn't mean our team members aren't good at what they're doing. It just means, look, they don't really need this. We don't need to spend the money on that technology. And that's all right.
Yeah.
But I do think shepherding the use of it and always checking in, just because you adopt a technology doesn't mean you're done. It just means it's time to always make sure that it's being utilized properly, it's being executed well.
Yeah. And I like the notion that also on the flip side, just because you invest in a tech doesn't mean you're going to be keeping it forever either.
No.
So
Yeah.
I like that logic
No,
too.
dynamic relationships, always. Dynamic relationships, always reevaluating.
Done.
But the one dynamic relationship you don't have is to your actual team members. That one, that make or break. Always invest in your team.